I'm Keith Olbermann, and this is The Resistance. Somewhere, Benjamin Franklin Bache and Matthew Lyon are saying, "I told you so." These men went to jail in this country under our Constitution for criticism. Bache was in new media. Lyon was a congressman from the party that was not in power. They were guilty of criticizing the president and other media which defended the president. And Mr. Bache and Congressman Lyon would remind us that we have previously completely and nearly fatally screwed up how to handle resistance, and they would remind us that the right to resist has been destroyed, and the country nearly destroyed with it, by better men than Donald John Trump. The man behind the jailing of Bache and Lyon and 20 or so other publishers, politicians, and citizens, one of whom for making a joke in public, the man Bache and Lyon opposed was President John Adams. That John Adams, founding father John Adams. Even a man of the vision of John Adams could not see that demonizing dissent and criminalizing resistance could by themselves end democracy. The stains upon the Adams legacy were called the Alien and Sedition Acts, and they threatened jail for anyone daring to, quote, write, print, utter, or publish any false, scandalous, and malicious writing against the government. And 59 days before his inauguration, Trump and his mob are already clearly laying the groundwork for new criminalization of your right to publicly criticize, that which will begin on day one as the worst presidential administration in our history. Much has been made of the distraction Trump provided by tweeting petulantly about how the cast of Hamilton addressed the vice president-elect when he attended their performance last Friday. The criticism of the coverage paid is valid. The fighter pilots call this chaff, spraying strips of metal into the air to screw up radar. We spent a day talking about moron Trump's moronic tweets instead of his confession in everything but name to fraud accusations in the Trump University lawsuit. We spent another day talking about Hamilton and Pence instead of about Trump totally mixing the presidency with his businesses. We spent another day talking about disrespect and respect instead of yesterday's gaffe from Trump's voter repression expert, in which he walked into a meeting with Trump carrying a document easily readable in the photographs, laying out details of registries, religious tests for people entering this country, and defense against lawsuits. We spent several entire news cycles talking about actors and rap, and not about the anti-Semites, the racists, the fascists Trump is appointing to his White House, the Bannons and Giulianis and Sessions and their ilk. So scummy it led the great John Cleese to conclude that it looks as if Trump, quote, is assembling the crew for a pirate ship. A distraction? Yes. But that does not mean his seeming disbelief at the evidence that he is hated is not real and not important. Bluntly, if he or Pence cannot handle booing, they should get new jobs in a new country, because whether they hear it or not, they will be booed every day for the rest of their lives. And more importantly, that also does not mean Trump is not intending to create a 21st century version of the Alien and Sedition Acts of John Adams. A president elected by a minority of the voters has again made threats against those who criticize him or his administration to be, has again made threats against the First Amendment. Taken out of the context of the anti-democratic, anti-criticism snowball already beginning its descent in this country, the takeaways from his tweets, "this should not happen," and "apologize," would seem merely like more petulance from the man-baby-elect, and the complaint about lack of respect merely more amazing self-unawareness from President Pussygrabber. But those tweets did not come in a vacuum. Before the election, Trump threatened to loosen up libel laws, singled out reporters by name to encourage abuse from the crowds at his rallies, promised to sue the New York Times, and an advisor criticized a TV host and tweeted, "Watch what happens to her after this election is over." The day after it was over, a contestant from one of his TV shows said of those who did not vote for him, quote, "Mr. Trump has a long memory, and we're keeping a list." Responding to criticism from Senate Minority Leader Reid, Trump's campaign manager Kellyanne Conway said he, quote, "should be very careful about characterizing somebody in a legal sense." In a legal sense. 9 days after the election, a federal judge in San Antonio, swearing in hundreds of new American citizens, told them that Donald Trump, quote, "will be your president, and if you do not like that, you need to go to another country." He then also lashed out against pro-athletes who have not stood for the national anthem, then reportedly claimed his remarks were not political. If you would like to resist, by trying to get this judge ousted. His name is John Primomo, and he can be removed by the U.S. District Court. Or perhaps at least they can send him the copy of the Constitution he appears to lack. But of course, professional demonizing of dissent requires blaming the victim. Campaign manager Conway said, "Dissent, anger, resistance, your resistance is the fault of the media." Most of the media did the world a disservice, she said, by not preparing them for the possibility of Donald Trump winning the presidency. It simply was not part of the conversation. So fascism isn't the problem. American media's reluctance to soften up the public to accept fascism, that's the problem. Which brings us back to the Alien and Sedition Acts and a state senator in Washington named Doug Erickson, a loud Trump sycophant, another one of the banana Republicans whom our friends, publisher Benjamin Franklin Bache and Congressman Matthew Lyon, would recognize immediately. "I respect the right to protest," he said, "but when it endangers people's lives and property, it goes too far. Fear, intimidation, and vandalism are not a legitimate form of political expression. Those who employ it must be called to account." Senator Erickson says he will propose a bill next year that would criminalize what he calls violent protesting, creating a new Class C felony punishable by fines of up to $10,000 and or imprisonment of up to 5 years, crimes to be called economic terrorism. "We're not just going to go after the people who commit these acts of terrorism," he continues, still digging. "We are going after the people who fund them. Wealthy donors should not feel safe in disrupting middle-class jobs." The wealthy donors to whom Senator Erickson refers would also be liable for any economic loss caused by the assemblies, supposedly protected by the First Amendment, or as Erickson wants to now call those assemblies, economic terrorism. So, Trump's Twitter tantrum about how Pence was treated at a play about a vice president so incapable of handling criticism that he shot the former Secretary of the Treasury may have been a diversion, and it may have seemed trivial compared to the other nightmares with which we wake each morning now. But do not mistake them. They are preface to new Alien and Sedition Acts, legal ones or merely cultural ones, to new demonizing of dissent, to, at best, chilling measures against your right to resist. And how do you resist laws designed to criminalize resistance? Happily, there is a method, tried and true, and you should prepare yourself for it. It worked in South Africa for Gandhi in 1908 when they tried to create a registry of people from India. It worked for Gandhi again decades later in India. It worked for the civil rights leaders here in the 1960s. If the laws come to pass, do not seek to evade them. Seek to break them. Have them broken so often by so many people that the jails cannot hold all of us and the infrastructure collapses with the government then begging for our help. Moreover, if resistance is denied us, the act of being arrested for resistance becomes resistance. Because we are not going back to the time of the Alien and Sedition Acts. Matthew Lyon and Benjamin Franklin Bache, and yes, he was Benjamin Franklin's favorite grandson, they are alive in our history. Even Adams and those who supported them had a kind of excuse. The country was barely 20 years old then. Trump and his mob have no excuse, no moral ground, no precedent, no right, and no chance of success. Come after our resistance, Trump, legally or culturally or both, and America will kick your ass. Resist. Peace.